Hi, this is Dave Griffin. Today we're going to talk about a classic, the Mutara Nebula mission. Now this came with the Miranda class, the USS Reliant. It recreates the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan climactic battle between the Reliant and the Enterprise, which would be an Enterprise refit for us. The forces are the independent side using a Miranda class, could also be the Reliant, and an independent captain. Now it says at least the Miranda class, so presumably you could have two ships, but you do only have 40 points. On the other side, we have the Federation side with at least one Federation ship, also 40 points. That would be the Constitution refit, most likely, if you want to be thematic, but it doesn't mandate that. Now, there are also 4 objective tokens, 6 inches from the sides, essentially in the 4 corners, which makes most of the playing area inside the nebula. Now, that has a lot of special rules. First of all, you can't attack a ship from inside the nebula to outside the nebula or vice versa. You also can't attack at further than range 1. If you have a secondary weapon that normally only attacks at range 2 to 3, you can fire it in the nebula, but you'll be damaged too, and that seems kind of pointless to me anyway. Now, you can also bump ships just like you would normally in Star Trek Attack Wing, but when you do, both sides are going to get damaged. There's a formula for it, basically on captain skill. So the ship with the higher captain skill is less likely to be damaged, but even so, it's a risky proposition to use as an attack. Now, when you enter the nebula, you lose your shields, your cloak, and you cannot perform either cloak or scan actions. But any ship inside the nebula may sense or echo normally as though they were cloaked. And you gain +2 defense dice the entire time you're in the nebula. So the terrain is very unusual with lots of special rules, and it really changes the sort of build you want to use for this scenario. The objective on both sides is to destroy the enemy ships. The obvious independent captain for the Reliant is Khan. I would guess Khan 8 rather than Gen Con, but it depends on what your strategy for the build is. Since this mission came out, there have been a lot of changes and a lot of new cards in the Federation genre, which is mostly what both sides will be pulling from. I would say that in the original scenario, the Reliant with its 2 dice of attack versus the Constitution refit with its 3 dice of attack is exactly even, because the Reliance perk gives you a +1 at range 1, and since all your attacks will be at range 1, both sides in that scenario would be shooting 4 dice. 3 for the Constitution refit, +1 for range 1, and the other one 2, +1 for range 1, +1 for the perk. Now, if you start adding other upgrades and you unbalance that attack strength from both sides, you could well unbalance the scenario. And there are a couple of good ways to do that these days. For instance, you can put a Type 8 phaser array on one of them. If you do, I would recommend you put it on both of them. Additionally, since this ship came out, the NX-01 came out with its enhanced hull plating. Since neither of these ships are going to be having shields, the enhanced hull plating has the potential for absorbing the damage from one side or the other. So I would recommend, if you're going to use enhanced hull plating, you might want to use that for both sides too. There are a number of interesting aspects to builds. One is both sides will have their shields down. So all those gankers which rely on your shields being down and your enemy's shields being down have the potential for being very destructive. Superior Intellect, for instance. But even Follower of Khan has the potential to be useful. On the Khan side, Khan 8 has the potential for creating a lot more crits. Of course, the enhanced hull plating is going to absorb a lot more damage too, but with Type 8 phaser arrays on both sides and enhanced hull plating on both sides, you are going to be throwing a lot of dice, 5 dice on both sides. So there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get a crit through occasionally, especially with Khan's ability to turn battle stations into crits. So Joachim, as an add-on to Khan, has the potential for choosing the crit that you inflict on the Constitution refit. And Attack Pattern Omega has the potential for putting a core breach on the Constitution refit. Now, you might also want system upgrades for both sides, not for the extra shield, but because it gives you the tech you can use to put enhanced hull plating on the ships. Now, the obvious captain on the Constitution refit is probably Kirk, except that he doesn't really have all that great a card for Star Trek Attack Wing, in my opinion. You're probably better off using Spock. Now, target locks only work at range 1, but when you can do it, it can make a big difference in quality, and that is a big advantage for the Constitution refit side. Pavel Chekhov is another good choice for either side, really, because you're going to have some aux tokens to work off if you have enhanced hull plating. And if you can work those tokens off by doing white maneuvers, that's going to be an incredible advantage. There are lots of other cards which work in a lot of other bills, like the 3-point William T. Riker. Always good to have an extra defense die with an extra battle stations conversion. And like I said, it is possible to use bumping to try to kill your opponent. But to do that, you have to have the superior captain skill, and you're still taking a risk. You could do ILEA on your ship to avoid losing your actions, but you're still going to potentially take damage. So this is a scenario that I really like. It's a classic scenario. I'd give it 4 out of 5. I think it's worth playing, and it changes radically depending on what the bills are on both sides. I think both sides have a pretty even chance because they're pulling from the same faction. The Khan side has the potential for pulling from other factions too, especially independent, but the Fed side has the potential for using Chekhov and other thematic crewmen that can really make a difference. So go out and have some fun with this scenario.